Yo, what's good? I'm Beauclair. We're going to be making a beat for Destroy Lonely's new album, If Looks Could Kill, like Carter Bryson and Sort, like this. So to start out, the first thing we want to go for is some guitar chords. I'll go with the second guitar first actually because it's a bit more mellow. So I've got this pretty basic pattern. It just has a few chords in it, as you can see. Just kind of like octave chords, like this. And then I've just added in a few extra little notes of flavor. I've got this little counter melody part up here. This just repeats through the whole progression, and it gets a little bit different. I think on this one it just does this extra note here basically. I don't know, it's a bit different here too, and here. So I was wrong. So yeah, it's more or less the same, it just changes up a little bit at the end. This is essentially, I'll take off the effects and show you what it sounds like. So we've started off using the clean electric guitar. So what you want to do is get that, go up to A, see how it's linked to A, turn the note off wherever you want it, I guess. I cranked up the softer attack a bit so it's a bit less like twangy, and I'd bring down the cutoff. And then I've added in this second part here, which is the Les Paul lead. As you can see, I've adjusted the volume right down so they sort of sit in behind the clean electric guitar. And what you want to do is play around with the amp select here. So on the electric guitars, you've got this amp select and then you've got drive. You've also got softer attack like the other one, which I recommend pushing up just a tiny little bit to take out some of the twanginess, make it sound a bit more full and strummed and not so much just like plucked with a plectrum. I put the amp select here at about just over 3/4 or around there. I've turned the drive up maybe like 10% at the most, and so this is what this guitar sounds like with no effects. So I've just got this little ding part here for every single bit, and then it just goes like ding 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 ding, which is these parts here. And then as you can see, I've just got some extra little like off notes just filling in some in between. It's really not too complex. It's more like, it looks complex up here, but this is just the octaves of the bass notes. And then this is just sort of like a little plucked bit, and then this is sort of just like the lead sort of sound over the top of it, like you're playing on the higher strings with the effects on. I've got a little bit of reverb, a little tiny bit of Fruity Delay 3 on the default setting on high pass with the cutoff brought down to 725.9 Hertz. Turn the wet down a little bit and I'll push the tone up to like 19%. I've got a EQ, just cut out some of the yuck that comes from those effects and just on the VST in general. I had the tiniest bit of Devil Lock on the Guitar Evil preset, and I played around, I think, and just took out some of the mix, some of the darkness, some of the crunch, and some of the crush. So just a little bit of everything, just down a little bit on that preset. Then I've got the Analog Chorus Doubler from Soundtoys in the Echo Boy VST plugin, whatever you want to call it. I got a little bit of Micro Shift, acoustic guitar clean wide. You don't really need all this. I'd say the most important ones is if you want a little bit more fuzz on it, you're going to need some sort of like saturator, like Devil Lock or Radiator, or like you can probably even just use, what's that, Fruity? Maybe like Fruity Fast Distortion or something. And yeah, then I've just like EQ'd it a little bit. I didn't want to take out, I didn't hear any like terrible frequencies yet, so all I've done is just taken out some of the yucky frequencies again, pushed up this sort of middle high range, and then pushed up the highest bit. And so with the effects on, it sounds like this. Then we've got the main guitar part, which is just sort of like some strummed chords, I guess. I'll take the effects off and I'll show you through the expand preset I used. It's the Les Paul lead again, and this time I bought the amp select over here, which is like a really, so I guess like some of these are like real fat, super distorted. Even if you take the drive down like I did, it's still got this real fat, chunky distortion sound. There's not much mids in it. It's got a real scooped sort of vibe to it. If you crank this up here, it gets more to like a real full, lots of mids sort of rock vibe. And then when you come here again, it gets a bit more like this side, if that makes sense. It starts becoming real crunchy, trebly and bassy. I brought up the soft attack a bit and I've taken the drive just to like 20%-ish. That's all I've done. I haven't really put any of the effects or anything on here. I've just left it pretty stock. So far it sounds like this. As you can see too, it's just kind of like that octave chord pattern that I had with the other one, where it just changes a little bit, but essentially your main chords are these. And then I've just added in like a top note and then just an extra chord in the middle of most of them. The top note is more sort of following its own little melody, which I'll show you in a sec. I'll put the effects on and give you a run through of that. I've got this parametric EQ, which is doing something similar to the last one I had in the chain on the other guitar, cutting out the lows, because this has got a lot of lows and a lot of muddy sounds in it, and just raising up the highs straight away from like the mid-high presence all the way up to the treble side. I've got this Echo Boy rich analog chorus turned up to maybe like 40%. I've got some radiator on there on the little tube amp setting. So this is just this preset just as it is if you want to use it. And I've just turned it down a little bit so because it makes it a fair bit louder as well. I've got a CQ preset, which is just the clarity one, just because it's so scooped that I just wanted to bring a bit more presence in. And as you can see, this introduces a bit more mids and a tiny little bit more high end. It doesn't really add any drive, which is good. And it takes the lows out just a tiny little bit. And then I've added a stereo shaper just to make this like a lot more wide and just so it sits under the other guitar nicely so I can make it pretty loud without making it overwhelming. And then I've just got one last EQ on here just to boost up a little bit of like the low mid just under the bass section, just to bring in like those chords a little bit more, and then a tiny little bit of high mid just to bring some presence in. And then from up here I've just introduced some of the highs again to give it a bit of a sparkly sort of vibe. And so this is what it sounds like with the effects. And so then just for the some sort of like keys, or I don't know if it's a pluck or keys or what you would call this. It's from my Celestial serum bank, which I'll drop in the description if you want to pick it up. There's a way you can still get it for free if you want, or you can download the free demo straight from the video. And this is just a dancer preset. It's a bit of a weird like, it's called a synth, but it's kind of got a plucky keys sort of vibe. It sounds like this. Got the same progression over and over again. It started off with just like this, just like the top notes, and then I've just like copied the whole thing an octave down just to make it sound a bit more full. Then I've got this weird little like, almost got like a leady vibe, but it's another synth from that same Celestial bank of mine. And this is the Zeta 111, and it sounds like this. And last up, I've just got this weird little like, I just wanted one of these sort of patterns because I really dig this style. This little thing is just like a lead from the hexagram serum bank, so I'll drop that in the link below as well. It just sort of follows this like octave pattern. So it's like B, A sharp, B, D sharp, B, A sharp on the higher octave, E, D sharp on the lower octave. This is just the same thing again here, but just pushed up. So it sounds like this. There's no effects on this, but what I did do is just go into my serum preset and just add some delay on there. So far the melody altogether sounds like this if we just put both guitars on at once. Moving on, we got the 808. This is an 808 I made. It's going to be in my new Elixir kit that should be out soon. Might be out around the same time as this video. If it's already out, I'll link it. This is the Nightkin 808. It's one of those like not much attack, sort of real bassy sounding plucked basses sort of 808s. And the pattern's pretty simple. So I started off just with like this over and over again. And these little like, you know, goes up to C sharp and D and then hits D twice here and goes back to B. And then I've just added in a couple of slide notes around. So here it slides down to F and goes back to B. I just added the slides like so they don't go on for really long, but they're not super quick ones. Then at some point I decided to drop the pattern so that like every second half goes like this with the G instead of the B. So it sounds like this. And I'll just put one of the guitars on so you can hear it with it. I think it sounds pretty sick. For the snares and the rest of the drums, I've just got this mere snot snare as my main one. This clever snare as one of the perks, and this other Amir snare, the S9. Got a bit of a clap vibe to it. They're my little like perk snares with the 808s. It sounds like this. Real simple drum pattern. I didn't want to make it too crazy because there's so much going on in the melody. And because I also made the hi-hats, they're not super wild, but like it's a pretty simple pattern where it just goes like, you know, the standard sort of trap pattern almost, especially for like a guitar beat. It's a little bit spaced out, and it's got the velocities played around with a lot. And they've just added a lot of these rolls and stuff on like the second and fourth bars. Sometimes it'll hit on the first, like this one. And sometimes it'll hit when the snare hits, like this. Just to give a bit more emphasis. It sounds like this with the hi-hats. Anyway, that's it for the beat, guys. I'll play you the full beat after this. Thank you very much for watching. Serum Banks in the description. Peace.